Hello and good day. My name's Dan Lammot, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Threshold.world. I'd like to thank you, wherever you may be on this planet we call home, for the opportunity to speak with you today. It's my hope that you, your loved ones, and your community are as well as can be expected at this point in time. Being here again at NetHope with so many mentors, friends, and colleagues who I admire is truly a gift. Muchísimas gracias a todos. I can't tell you how much we appreciate the opportunity to be part of this NetHope community. In my opinion, this summit is hands down the best nonprofit convening of the year, regardless of whether we're together or connecting virtually. To that end, I'd like to offer a special thanks to the NetHope team for hosting all of us for this year's Global Summit. I know you moved mountains to transition this event from Berlin to online, and thank you for making the right choice. To my fellow Thresholders, who I will do my level best to represent today, and to the late philosopher Alan Watts, whose words were an inspiration for this story.
Don't you remember when you went first to school? You went to kindergarten. And in kindergarten, the idea was to push along so that you could get into first grade, and then push along so that you could get into second grade, third grade, and so on, going up and up. And then you went to high school, and this was a great transition in life. And now the pressure is being put on. You must get ahead. You must go up the grades and finally be good enough to get to college. And then when you get to college, you're still going step by step, up to the great moment in which you're ready to go out into the world. And then when you get out into this famous world comes the struggle for success in profession or business. And again, there seems to be a ladder before you, something for which you're reaching all the time. And then, suddenly, when you're about 40 or 45 years old in the middle of life, you wake up one day and say, I've arrived. And by Jove, I feel pretty much the same as I've always felt. In fact, I'm not so sure that I don't feel a little bit cheated. Because you see, you were fooled. You were always living for somewhere where you aren't. And while, as I said, it is of tremendous use for us to be able to look ahead in this way and to plan, there is no use planning for a future, which when you get to it and it becomes a present, you won't be there. You'll be living in some other future which hasn't yet arrived. And so in this way, one is never able actually to inherit and enjoy the fruits of one's action. You can't live at all unless you can live fully now.
My goodness, don't you remember when you first saw someone do something that made the world a better place?
As a young teenager, I learned about the degradation of the coastal Louisiana wetlands and the impact that destruction was having on ecosystems, wildlife, culture, industry, and the economy. And the loss of something that was so beautiful and integral to so many people's lives made a huge impression on me. And I was inspired by the people that were protecting and restoring those wetlands, and it reinforced my desire to try to make the world a better place.
And don't you remember when you first made a positive impact in this world?
Decidí ser maestra porque entendía que esa era la profesión clave para poder tener impacto en el mundo, para poder desde mi salón impactar 20, 25 estudiantes que a la larga iban a impactar sus hogares y luego a sus comunidades, y así desde lo chiquito ir impactando positivamente otros renglones de nuestra sociedad.
And don't you remember when you first began working for a nonprofit?
My first volunteer experience was actually right out of college. I worked for the Natural Resource Defense Council, NRDC, reviewing EIRs for landfill placement in Southern California. After that, the next one was as a grad student. I went back to home to Laguna Beach, and I actually volunteered for the Surfrider Foundation looking at the construction of one of the first artificial surfing reefs to mitigate for surf loss. I fell in love with the Surfrider Foundation in 1995 when I had that internship, and I was determined to eventually get a job there, which I did 3 years later. So that's my story from internships with nonprofit organizations, and it's served me pretty well.
I joined Shift Capital, an impact real estate development firm in Philadelphia, as chief operating officer in 2016 because the founder, Brian Murray, had sold me on the vision that real estate could be the biggest lever for social change if it was used intentionally and with a focus on the existing community.
And don't you remember that as the years passed and you pushed along from one job to the next, from one program to another, step by step, up and up in the organization to the point where you finally became a leader? This was a moment that represents a great transition in life, where the pressure's put on you to increase the impact of all those you're accountable for in your team, your organization, and your community. It's a time when the anything is possible world around you tells you change must be possible. But when you step into this famous world of possibilities, comes a struggle for success in service. When achieving monumental goals in the context of tectonic shifts in humanitarian, environmental, political, and public health challenges seems beyond the horizon, beyond the threshold. Alan Watts was more right than perhaps he could have imagined. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that the future we plan for is not the one that exists when we arrive. We know this to be true in school, family, work, and play. Just look at us right now, connecting digitally as a community rather than being with each other in Berlin. To me, Alan's call to live fully now is an old thing for a new age. Or even better yet, it's the old thing for this new age. It's a story that's yet to be told. Which brings me to the most crucial question for nonprofits in this moment. Why is it so difficult to tell the story of your impact at scale? Why is it that less than 1/3 of the world's 10 million nonprofits serving billions of stakeholders can effectively measure and report on the outcomes of their projects? At Threshold, we've made attempting to answer this question our mission. Since we were founded 2 years ago, we've interviewed dozens and dozens of program staff and leadership. We've evaluated every major monitoring and evaluation, theory of change, and data collection software package, template, tool available in the market, and read thousands of pages of best practice guidance and digital data standards on how nonprofits can digitally transform to achieve greater impact. We've learned a lot, but the conclusion we've reached regarding today's M&E solutions are they exist in isolation, disconnected from other systems, so there's no clear path from theory of change to results and back again. They're difficult, if not impossible, for novice users to adopt and get value from because they're built for headquarters, not program teams. So people return to paper and Excel. They cater to documentation rather than contextual narratives, so information remains stale or worse yet, gets lost. And finally, M&E practitioners most often do not have time to explore new or better ways to manage programs because they're always being asked to do more with less. So they're unable to share and learn from their colleagues and peers in ways that they can in the consumer world. And yet nearly everyone we spoke with sought more efficiency and connectivity across the program lifecycle, deeper collaboration with peers, funders, and clients, improved technical literacy within their organizations and with partners. But our conclusion overall is the status quo of technology in the nuanced, mission-critical world of nonprofit program delivery is not built for this new age. It's an old thing for an old age. Now, each of us knows a great story when we hear one. Think of your favorite childhood story. Perhaps it's The Secret Garden, where we learn about the magic of life through young Mary's transformation from spoiled to selfless. And you come to know that if you look the right way, you can see that the whole world's a garden. Or maybe it's The Little Engine That Could, a fairy tale that teaches children the value of optimism. And who could forget, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. Or a great success story like Walt Disney, who made magic seem possible and taught us, as Mulan said, the flower that blooms in adversity is the most rare and beautiful of all. Or one of my heroes, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who showed us the value of grit in the face of tremendous adversity. She said, My mother told me to be a lady, and for her, that meant be your own person, be independent. We may know a great story when we see or hear one, but it's an entirely different thing to be able to gather the narrative and create and share an unforgettable story that moves people to action, especially on the scale of the billions of positive outcomes the world's nonprofits and stakeholders partner to realize. Now, Nancy Duarte, author of the book Resonate, has what I consider one of the best models for understanding what makes great stories so especially relevant. She says, great stories contrast what is with what could be. If you put that into practice, here's how a great story goes. This thing happened, then another thing happened, which caused this other thing to happen, until finally something else happened as a result of all of those other things that already happened. The end. Great stories alternate down a path from what is to what could be and back again until a higher plane is reached or a threshold is crossed. Do you know why this makes them great stories? Because they're like life. The stories you live in the first person, in the work that you do, in the office and in the field, are great stories because they are about real life. They're not linear. They roll between what is and what could be, like a ripple crossing a pond, after which the pond is never the same again. Through your work, you bring together some of the most important, moving, and compelling stories to be told. Your stories offer a sense of promise, the vigor of mission, and a semblance of hope. But as you know, your stories are all too often untold because they're locked up in databases, in paper stacks, in backpacks, or on bookshelves, or they're hidden in those neat little cells inside of spreadsheets. And sometimes they're even hiding in plain sight behind a beautiful data visualization or dashboard that might appease a funder, but it's not reality. And as we've seen with the current pandemic, data and charts aren't enough to change behaviors for so many. The status quo of technology for nonprofit programs has to end. If you want to move people, the technology you leverage to plan, deliver, track, learn from, and communicate programmatic outputs and outcomes should be built for storytelling. It should make it possible for you and your team to do the work by collaborating to define and adapt social change theories, co-creating projects and log frames to align those resources, and engaging all stakeholders in project execution from input to outcomes. And then it should make it easy for you to build authentic, beautiful stories backed by data and learning that you can share and publish to the world's social networks and across digital channels. It's stories that bind us. They allow us to live fully now by simply being. They transport us from what is to what could be by humanizing the challenges we face as a global community and creating indelible connections through authentic narrative and beautiful design. They enable us to know where we've been and who each of us and the people we serve truly have the potential to be. Ask yourself, how can we drive collective action towards a more sustainable future if the transformational stories of your projects and programs, assumptions and learnings aren't shared? As Alan Watts said, we must live fully now to contribute to the future we wish to inherit, even if we won't be there when we arrive. Our mission at Threshold.world is to leverage technology to empower nonprofits to do more good. We've committed our lives to imagining and delivering technology so you, the heroes on the front lines of nonprofit programs, can do this very old thing for this new age. Tell authentic stories that move people to action. We call this technology Be.world because being is at the center of living fully now. Being, just being, is a manifestation of empathy. It's how we connect to and with each other. And there's no better way to be than through stories, which is why we're sharing for the very first time our goal to tell 1 billion stories. Imagine, if you will, the impact we would have if our community had the ability to elevate the voice of change through 1 billion stories. Imagine if the outcome you dedicated your life to achieving could drive people around the world to action the same way you were inspired when you first saw someone do something that made the world a better place. We hope you'll allow us to be part of your story. You can learn more about b.world at waitlist.world. Muchísimas gracias por la oportunidad de compartir con ustedes hoy. Ha sido un placer. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. It has been a pleasure, and I very much look forward to telling stories with you.